Okay, so this is the video for the introduction and study plans for the digital SAT for the updates to my book. Now, pay attention to the video description over time because if there's something I want to add that I forgot to state in this video, I'll put it there sometimes. Or if I come up with other videos that I think you might find helpful, I'll link them in the descriptions for the specific chapter or something that they apply to. Now, I apologize for the way I'm recording this on my phone right now. I will eventually re-record these with a little mount thing, but that did not work out logistically with where I moved and everything like that, so this will have to do for now. But basically for this introduction, it's just make sure that you read the how to use the book section. That's the most important part. I give my background if you want, but it's this part that's really important. I gave you a short version and a long version for the people that need some stuff just told to them in a briefer version. So basically how this book works is that I created the chapters to go in conjunction with the videos for each chapter. That way, if you're stuck on something, you don't have to look at some vague answer key. You can just see me work through it in real time really fast for whatever you're stuck on. And also at the beginning of each video, I can give you a little lesson of what the skills are that you're going to be reviewing in that chapter so that you're not just going into it blind. So to find the playlist, I mean, you're already here, but you would just go to my YouTube channel and find the playlist that matches the title of this book. And then you just follow the instructions in each of the videos. Now, if you're taking the digital SAT, the most important thing to remember is that you don't have to do every single chapter in this book. The digital SAT has changed a lot, specifically in terms of the the grammar portion and the reading portion. So the stuff in this book is going to, the chapters I tell you to do, it's going to apply to a third of the questions on the digital SAT exam. So just keep that in mind. There's a reason why I tell you to skip certain chapters for this book. So just pay attention at the beginning of the chapter. It'll tell you whether or not you need to skip it for the digital SAT, just so you're not doing extra stuff you don't need to do. Now, this book can be used for learning tips and tricks and grammar strategies and stuff like that for the digital SAT and the ACT English section, or any other grammar test, really. It's just that you would learn the content, grammar is grammar, you learn the grammar skills here. And then what I would encourage you to do is after go and take practice tests to learn the exact format of the specific exam you're taking for the best results. Now, it does cover all ACT English concepts, so everything on the ACT English section would be in this book, but like I said, it only covers about a third of what would be considered digital SAT reading and writing questions because there's more, the reading and writing is put together now, and it's more so of reading comprehension and grammar mixed together. So it's not going to be all grammar, if that makes sense. So this just covers the grammar portion of that. So, and I'll be coming out with stuff later for the reading. And then this is just the long version. I've already kind of said this. So there's chapter quizzes after the whole notes portion. I would encourage you to do the chapter quizzes on your own first and then attempt to correct them on your own before watching the video for anything you're stuck on. That'll get you the best results. Because even if you think that oh, I can read an answer key or I could see a video explanation and I could do that next time, a lot of the times you can't if you go back to it, and you actually need to think through it yourself first in order to remember how to do it correctly. So just that's what I would recommend. And then my goal with this book is to help you learn a few crucial strategies instead of a million nuanced ones, because there's just you don't need to learn a million different grammar rules. A lot of them can fall under the same category. You'll see with the context and agreement chapter, there's a reason why I made a context and agreement chapter and not a pronoun antecedent chapter, and then I made a subject verb agreement chapter separate. It's just all kind of falls under pay attention to the context and make sure it matches. So that's pretty much it. And pay attention to the study plans because it'll tell you what the most important stuff is to do and what specifically I recommend in terms of what chapters to skip and stuff like that. So about the test, So I already have a video going over the ACT English portion. So if you're doing that, like just watch the ACT video. But for the digital SAT, they've changed it now, and we don't call them like sections anymore. We call them modules. So we have 2 modules in total for the digital SAT reading and writing section. Each of them contains 27 questions and it's 32 minutes long, each of them. Okay, and like I said, 1/3 of the concepts or of the questions will cover the grammar concepts, and pay attention to study plans, and make sure you check the official ACT or College Board website, which is the organization that does the SAT, to figure out like what the requirements are that you need. With the digital SAT, you have to be very careful about the technology requirements. Like if you need to request technology to take the exam on, you have to make sure to do that at least 30 days prior, things like that. Just be aware of, and like obviously registration deadlines, things like that. And then never leave anything blank. Even if you think that you're going to come back to it, it's better to just guess at that point in case you forget to come back to it. This is like especially important for the ACT because you could throw off your bubble sheet. Now on the digital SAT, you can like mark things that you have to come back to, so it's not as much of an issue as it would be with like a bubble sheet. But I would still recommend just never leaving anything blank, like just mark it to come back to later. And then, so where to start, just go to page 9 and follow the study plans for your specific needs. And then just a couple disclaimers. So I wrote this book in a different format than the exams at times. So I include and I notate that there's a specific example of an ACT style question versus an SAT style question, so you can see the difference between the two in the chapters where it's relevant. I also, on the review test, focused on making a review test in the format of each of the exams, or the question format of each of the exams. Because remember, the SAT will have like reading comprehension mixed in, but it's just going to be like the grammar questions for the review test. So it's not going to be like exactly like the exam, which is why you should do practice tests afterwards to make sure that you understand the concepts. And you should always use one specialized resource to learn the content and then do practice tests as usual for like any exam to get the best results. And then make sure with the passages, I just kind of like, I'm a little bit of a history like buff, but I get like dates and stuff wrong all the time. Didn't feel like looking up a bazillion things while writing this book since it's just a grammar book. So some of the stuff may not be, I might have remembered completely correctly. I'm pretty sure it's correct, but just in case, I wanted to put that little disclaimer. And then let's see, I bolded instead of underlined certain portions because like on the exam you're going to see that it's underlined. Like it's just a little, those little differences are why I recommend always doing the practice tests afterwards, or one of many reasons. And then you will see typos and grammatical errors in several of the passage portions, and that's just because how this was written previously was that it was for like the ACT, and like there were already like other grammatical errors, and I didn't want to give away like good questions that I'd already written that go over different grammar concepts. I didn't want to like correct it and then you see it later and you already know the correct version in the book, and I still felt like they were really good questions, so I wanted to keep them in there. Let's see. And that's it pretty much. This is like the social media information. And then now the study plans. So I already have the video for the ACT stuff. So for the SAT, if you have 3 different options, you have a cramming one, if you have 1 or more months, like around 1 month, and then if you have like 2 or more months, there's a plan for that. So this is the cramming one. So for the cramming one, 1 week before your exam, make sure you have everything that you need. I mean, it's a little late to request a laptop or anything like that, but make sure that you have like what you need in terms of technology and like all the test day checklist items from the College Board website. Make sure you have all of that. I would recommend taking a timed official practice test. You can find free copies on the College Board website. And make sure you also do corrections, because it doesn't really matter if like you did the practice test if you don't learn from it of like what your mistakes are. Corrections are always the most important part in the whole test prep process. So then we have SAT 3 days before your exam. What you're going to do is you're going to take the review test in chapter 17, the one that I formatted to be like the SAT questions, digital SAT questions, and then do corrections on those. And then I would also recommend going to the SAT portion of the chapter 15 grammar notes. So in the grammar notes chapter, I have like, here are the ACT grammar notes and here are the SAT grammar notes. Focus on the SAT ones if you're taking the SAT. And then I would recommend doing that for like 5 to 10 minutes each night, just to like kind of like review the rules and get them like in your mind and memorizing them. And then I would also recommend that if you have the capacity to do more, that you do as many chapter quizzes as you possibly can. Specifically in chapter 7, the punctuation chapter, and chapter 9, the agreement and context chapter, because that's going to be where most of like the types of questions that they're going to ask are going to be in those chapters specifically. And then I would also recommend going over the SAT strategies in chapter 2. So like at the beginning of chapter 2, there's ACT strategies, SAT strategies. I would make sure to definitely read the SAT strategies. And then if you have more time, just start completing and correcting as many practice tests as possible if you're in the cramming stage. So cramming would be like, oh, I have like less than a month. And then, so this is ACT. Let's go to the SAT. So if you have about a month before the SAT, you, again, I've already mentioned this, but always check your answers and do corrections, most important part of all of this. Then here are the recommended chapters for the SAT. I listed them in order of importance for like, so you'll see like chapter 7, chapter 9, like those are like the first ones there. So I would recommend doing it in that order. And then make sure you just leave chapter 17, like if you finish this fairly quickly, just make sure that you leave chapter 17 for 3 days before your exam. And don't do that until 3 days before your exam. So that, because the way that I wrote the review test is to be like a review of all the concepts that you need to know, basically. Or I hesitate saying all, but like, because I could have always forgotten something, maybe, you never know. But basically, like the majority of the concepts that you need to know, all wrapped up into like one efficient test so that you're reminded of those concepts right before you take the exam. So that's why you should wait 3 days before the exam to do that. And then here's a sample weekly schedule, and you need to spend 30 minutes. It's basically just saying like, hey, spend every other day doing like 30 minutes of working on a chapter, and then spend like a couple minutes studying the grammar notes so you like memorize the grammar rules. Now you can mix this up with like the SAT math stuff, and like do like maybe I would follow this kind of as like maybe do like 30 minutes of grammar and like 30 minutes of reading practice and 30 minutes of math practice, something like that, and like spread out in this manner if you need to study for the other sections as well, which most people do. And then we have 1 week before the exam. Make sure you have everything you need, a time to practice, take a time practice tests. It's very like the 1 week before thing is very similar to like what I already stated in the cramming section. And you can find free copies of the exam online, and make sure you do those corrections. And then for 3 days before the exam, as I already mentioned, do the review test in chapter 17, and then review the SAT portion of the chapter 15 grammar notes for 5 to 10 minutes each night. And then if you still have time to like do more, I would complete all the chapters in like the suggested chapters portion or recommended chapters portion right over there. And then just start taking as many practice tests as you can and correcting them. I would definitely recommend getting the official digital SAT prep guide if you are able to do so. Because then you'll get like the best practice is going to be like the official practice, because no one can write the test like the people that actually write the test. And then if you have 2 or more months before the digital SAT, again, always remember to do corrections. That's the most important part of all this. Again, same thing with the recommended chapters. They're listed in order of importance. And then make sure that you leave the review test for 3 days before your exam. And then here's a sample weekly schedule. It's the month, this would be for month 1. So it would be like 30 minutes alternating every other day of working on the chapters in the order suggested, and then spending 5 minutes doing the review of the notes just to practice memorizing those grammar rules. And you can like mix this up with like math and reading, like I already mentioned. So like maybe you do like 30 minutes of this, 30 minutes of reading one day, and then like 30 minutes of this, 30 minutes of math another day, and like mixing it up with like all the different sections or modules, I should say now. And then for month 2, this would be a sample weekly schedule. So it's like basically this is when you focus on more so of like taking the practice tests and doing those corrections, because in the first month, like the way I wrote this book was so that it's the most efficient practice possible. If you're doing this like every week for a month, you'll probably finish all of those chapters in that time span. But if you haven't, then like continue doing those until you're done with them, but then start doing practice tests and corrections. And again, I would recommend getting the official digital SAT prep guide 1 week before your exam. Make sure you have everything you need. Start taking practice tests and doing corrections on those. You can get the free copies online on the College Board website. 3 days before the exam, take the review test in Chapter 17, and then do the grammar notes portion. Chapter 15 grammar notes, like study that for 5 to 10 minutes each night. Again, like practice tests and correcting them if you have extra time is the best thing you can do. So that is pretty much it. Also remember, if you want to slow down the speed that I'm talking, or you want to like change the picture quality, because sometimes on phones like it'll automatically go to like a lower picture quality to save your data. You can do that by clicking the little settings button, and you can change the photo quality, and you can like speed up or slow down how fast the video is going. If I'm talking like too fast, you can slow it down. If I'm talking too slow, you could speed it up.